Tracy's account, or?
I'm not sure anymore.
I'm not either.
I'm not sure.
All right, did something.
Testing.
Testing.
Now we've got it.
Do we just need to start from old business then? Okay, I think,
Well, I just want to, I'm excited to get started with the downtown merchant list. And did we happen to get the list? Okay. Well, I guess we're just going to wait on the list and maybe talk about how we're going to divide it and then go around and visit.
okay,
Yeah,
all right.
that's pretty much it.
All right, we'll move on down to expanding of boundaries.
I asked that to be put on there, and this deals, as we all know, with this proposal that Mr. Barber talked about, and it has to do with a housing development over off of Anderson Road, and he mentioned that we would likely need to expand our DDA boundaries, and that the applicant would have to have an endorsement of the authority of an authority to go forward with the application. I don't know if we really need to expand our boundaries, because that particular project would definitely affect downtown for sure. But I would like for our attorney to kind of tell us what she thinks about this. It's outside our existing boundaries for DDA, and the DDA is kind of the last resort for an endorsing authority for these bonds.
Currently, the proposed area, I think, is Anderson Road. and
Can't
that-
hear.
Can you hear? There we go, okay. Can you hear me now? The proposed project is outside your current boundaries. In order to amend the boundaries, the city council would have to adopt a resolution saying that that would be part of the central business district. So they would have to make that determination if we think that area is in the central business district or not. And so in order for this authority to issue bonds for the revenue for the project, it would have to be in this authority's district. So if you choose that this project is something you want to support, then the amendment would have to be done.
Okay, now our existing boundary, Stacy, is really not the downtown district. It's a little bit larger than just the downtown district. It goes up South Carroll Road to, I think, Spring Street, and goes out to the west to where Montgomery comes into Highway 78, and goes out to roughly where the
That looks very similar, yes. We recently amended the district to try to make it match what we'd been operating under. So we've gone through the process of amending it. I think it matched the comprehensive plan that was in place a couple of years ago.
okay.
So I think these gentlemen have a presentation if you want to hear it, but about the project. But it's really, if you think this area would be part of the central district that would benefit the downtown area, that both, you could make the recommendation to the city council, but they would have to make that final determination.
Okay, well, this proposal, as I understand it, is really needed to move forward on the possible Mirror Lake connector, which would certainly be a positive thing for downtown. So with the term Downtown Development Authority, it is not just existing area, but it's development area, right?
It's kind of, it's what you want to make it. It says central business district. So it's not, it's not a very limited definition. If you
Okay.
think that would be the central business district, it doesn't have to be like downtown.
Or part of the central business district at some point in the future.
It just says central business district in the statute. So I think you have a little leeway. If
I
you
would think so.
If you might have to do this project to help expand it, to have that part of your central business district.
Okay,
But the project is defined in the statute, it's pretty broad there as well. It has to fit an essential public purpose of the development of trade, commerce, industry, and employment opportunities. So that's very broad too. And I understand, I did consult with Atlanta Bond Council to see if this is something that, if a multifamily housing would be considered this. And they said that bond lawyers because you'd have to issue bonds to issue the money, have considered apartments to be part of this purpose, because it's pretty broad, trade, commerce, industry, and employment. But some communities choose not to focus on that as part of their authority. Like here, the Villa Rica Development Authority, the industry, they said they'd rather focus on manufacturing than this type. So, so it's up to the community and the board to decide if this is the type of project they want to support. If you do issue the bonds, they would have to go to have a court validation procedure, to have a public hearing, and you would not be personally responsible for the debt. So, and the taxes don't back the debt either. So that's just a little synopsis.
but this would be only one part of what we would be looking at long-term for this expansion here. This would be a tremendous first step to get that going, wouldn't it?
Right.
Yeah, okay,
Okay.
all right.
Any other questions for me?
Not right now.
Okay.
I was holding his hand up.
I don't know how familiar you guys are with the proposed tax allocation district, but the most liberal thing you could do would be to pick that whole area up. So that would be the Avante and the Mill, all the way to Tanner, and all the way to Shoreline. A lesser liberal approach would be to not take that top parcel, which is the land below Old Stone, down to the lift station at Cleghorn. There's about 60 acres right there that you could leave out for now and do later. And then the Scherner piece, which fronts Punkintown, or Mirror Lake Boulevard, maybe, at Shoreline, you could leave that piece out. The piece that Arbor Valley most critically need would be the parcels just north of Anderson and east of Cleghorn back to downtown. So you really got sort of four options. You could do the whole thing, you could leave off the top piece, you could leave off the east piece, you could leave them both off. But at a minimum, we need you to get the land of the proposed multifamily. That complicated, does that make it better?
Have you seen this map that shows the outline in red, Tom? Is the outline in red the area that the city was considering for a TAD? So the TAD would spur commercial, office, retail, and housing.
Yep. So
So-
if you pick the whole thing up, that's, the most aggressive. This 60 acres going up to Old Stone, you could leave out and do later. This is the Scherner piece. You could leave that out, that's Shoreline and that's Punkintown. This is the piece we most, that we need you to consider without question. So it depends on how crazy you wanna be.
Now the road that you've got drawn in there,
Right?
is that pretty much the way you think it's gonna wind up being?
We don't know.
So the answer is no?
This is the current preferred route. This
Yeah.
works good for Cerner. It's the best accommodation of the topo and the water that we can find, combined with being the least disruptive of the existing housing stock and taking advantage of existing roads. So this is an existing road. This is North Carroll, this is Stone. So whether we do this or not, it's a function of money. But we've got to do this, but the topo back here is terrible. So we're doing one of these,
Yeah,
which is not good in an ice event. You know, and we've got a couple of those roads now, Mirror Lake Parkway, going down to the dam being one of them. But that's our current thought. Now, this piece is sort of predicated on a land swap. So one of the things that Dee and I have talked about is they own this and the city owns this. And there's a creek here. So he can't build this way. And if he sticks to this, I'm getting like 150 units, which it isn't as much buying as I'd like. I'd rather see 300. So if we do a land swap and we take this, then we could build the road to the left of the creek, and then he could do maybe 190, which is still not 300, but it's better than 150. And the road will run adjacent to him, and we'd have a nice commercial piece right here. It's one of the only dry pieces in the whole thing. All of this is good. This is good. This is terrible. Behind the olive tree,
yep.
it's mush. And then this is all, this is all residential here. So this part is just, this is Cleghorn and this is Anderson. We were gonna try to go in through Louise Lane, but at the end of that, we would disrupt, a number of long-time residential. So this is just speculative because these guys are not at the table. We're dealing with this guy and this guy and this church directly. This guy's not really involved yet.
The lower part there behind the olive tree, is that one of the parcels we can set aside, just like we can set aside the northern piece? Yeah, the northern piece and
The Cerner piece.
and the eastern piece.
To bring it back later then, right?
But the preferred route we're talking about, that would ensure, well, I say ensure, that would be most likely to ensure the success of this, would be the part that goes all the way to Mirror Lake and picks up that section in the middle.
Yeah, we
From
have
there,
absolutely got to build that.
yeah, right.
Anything less than that, and it doesn't really make sense. This is if we have the money. This is, if these guys come to the table and want to participate.
I've got a little bit of heartburn using bonds strictly for residential, but if we pick up the entire area that the TAD is going to be in under the DDA boundaries, we know the residential will spur retail and commercial and other items in there. Plus, if the TAD extends up to Tanner, Tanner's going to want to take advantage of that piece of ground up there too. So I feel more comfortable if the area that the TAD is going to be in is part of our boundaries, because we're going to spur development there, not just residential.
One of the things I like about y'all being involved in it is you then have a seat at the table as we do this, whereas now you don't. Right?
Yeah, right.
And if this works, it's gonna fall on y'all at some point. If this becomes a real thing and we can get commercial development in here, it's not just gonna impact downtown. To me, this could become part of downtown. And then over, 50 years, who knows what this
Yeah.
is.
Is there a downside at all into doing it all at one time? That you're aware
You wanna
of?
weigh in on that? That's over my head.
I can't really think of anything, the downside of encompassing all of it. I guess if it's, you probably want, you could take the theory that it's what you think is the central business district now. And, I'm not sure how much later it would be to get the property to the north. It's up to you, really. It's a policy decision, really.
The Mirror Lake Connector is gonna be a business corridor.
Right.
And that's why making sure that we've got all of that. And if Tanner does something up at the top, then you're liable to have a mix of business down on this street that's to be determined, but
I'd like to see medical office here to support the hospital. And maybe some retail.
One of the theories that the bond lawyers or the developers espouse, that it promotes trade and industry, is because it provides affordable housing for your workforce, is another rationale for doing a project like this.
Okay, I'd love to add a couple other benefits at a second.
You gonna let the salesman loose on you?
I'm Dee Brightle, I'm with Arbor Valley. No, the other piece that I wanted to mention in that is, and she can correct me, but through the process of that, issuing the bonds, you're a conduit issue. So basically, DCA, the Department of Community Affairs, actually issues the actual bonds. So by what that actually means is, what that is basically saying is, it gives you the local authority to say yes or no. It doesn't put any financial responsibility on you, and it does not come back to you in any other way. The other aspect of doing that is, it will produce program income, it will produce income to you that is no strings attached, and it's not recourse, meaning that if we don't fulfill our obligation, you're still gonna get paid, if that makes sense. It's a guaranteed from our development through the state. So with that said, that's anywhere from about $100,000 to $200-something thousand of issuance fees that your authority would be able to bring in, as well as usually there's a financial advisor that will oversee the financial numbers, and that also is a cost that's borne by the developer. So to you as the development authority, it's really gives you the ability to control the area and what's around it with the benefit of having some income. And I can give case study after case study, but I would think that y'all would probably agree too that in the middle of this area, there's probably seen very little new development in the last 25, 30 years. Putting about $35 to $40 million development in the middle of that area, I can go ahead and tell you what it will do overnight. That area will completely transform. It will not be the same area. The residents live there for a long time, they're gonna love it because you're gonna want city streets to improve, you're gonna want walkability, you're gonna want downtown to move into that. It will improve that area. The other thing is that we've also seen is, it also helps other areas around it because of the other businesses that come. And on top of that, you will be 5 new employees that will be hired somewhere locally that fit the criteria of it. So those are some of the benefits from a financial standpoint, and from a residential standpoint, it provides workforce housing that is very well needed. And you say, well, what is that? What kind of person is that? Think of any of the ones that are working at anywhere from firefighting to that side, to school teachers, to your regular hourly employees working 40 hours of work week at one of the plants here in town. They all would be, this is the type of place that they would want to live. That's the type of housing we're trying to develop. So if that's any other questions on
Yeah, roughly what is the timeline on this, assuming everything goes as we've discussed it tonight?
The timeline that we're working in is been talking with Tom, is try to work within the TAD timeline so we could be a benefit to the city from that standpoint. So we're in that kind of a time frame. Where I'm running into is intrinsic cost from the standpoint that economics can change. Right now, economically, we're at a spot financially that the equity, the debt, the development, all this makes 100% sense. But I can tell you, 12 months from now, it may not. And what I mean by that is anything can happen. Economics change globally, it changes here. Because the way the process works, like anything else, if interest rates start to rise, construction costs start to rise, then all of a sudden it becomes unfeasible. And then it doesn't matter if we're in the TAD, or it doesn't matter at that point, the finances just don't make sense. So there's that timeline just being that. The other side to it is we're looking at it from the standpoint that we do need to try to move forward if there's a route to do that. If not, then it probably doesn't make a lot of sense for us to try to push the development forward. Because it may be, have to relook at it a year or two from now, the economics may not make sense. We may not have the same control of the property, the whole 9 yards. So that's kind of why we would like to move it along sometime in the spring. Economically, all the indicators, everything's lined up perfectly for us to move forward.
So under the best case scenario, we're talking about over the next couple of 3 years, it should be done.
If we could get the authority to approve the expansion, and the city council approve that further piece, then we would start working with engineering and with Tom about go ahead and starting that to where in probably about 6 to 9 months after we have made that change and the authority wants to move forward with issuing the bonds. Once we get to that spot, I'm anywhere between 9 months ready to start construction. So you're looking at around a 14 to 18 month construction period. So we would be up and operating within less than 3 years. Fully leased and operating in less than 3 years.
The most optimistic scenario.
Most
Gotcha.
optimistic, if this is pushed back another 6 months, depending on where things go, where you line up, you may end up being maybe another 6 to 9 months pushed off. But, if where we are today, and Sam can probably correct me on my timelines, but we're about 9 months to closing, another 14 to 18 months after that building. So if we can get this moved along the next 3 months, then we could be closed by the end of the year and start construction around January, February, once the weather obviously makes sense.
What you need, Tom?
18 months to build, and then you're
Yeah.
anxious.
And first residents would move in probably a month or two before the final construction, because you would move in phases and so forth.
In order for us to do the TAD, we have to have a redevelopment plan put together and approved by council, and we have to have the property values of the TAD certified by the Carroll County assessor as of January 1 after it passes. So at a minimum, he's waiting on me until early 20, just because of that. If he feels before then that he doesn't, it would monkey with his increment going into the TAD and helping to pay for the TAD bonds. So I need him to wait until I've got the TAD ready to populate with new development. Does that make sense? So I may be
Holding him up.
holding up the beginning of his operation. But once I get that in place, and then he's free to move at this pace.
And the way to look at it, if we can line up all our pieces and it becomes a waiting game to work out with that, that's not a position we're unfamiliar with, and we're not upset about. It's right now, I don't know the right path to complete that unless there's this change or I go a different route, and I would prefer to do this, and discussing with city staff, they would rather see this because the benefit of the value coming back to helping the city.
On several occasions, Tom has mentioned 300 units. Is there a path or a phase to that, to get there from 190 to 300? Is that
There could
that
be.
something you're looking at?
Right, where we're limited right now is a little bit of information. And what I mean by that is, you really don't want to start engineering, getting to the fine details of soil sampling and some of the topo. It's going to depend on that. There's two factors that we have, is there's some topo, which y'all are aware of, and then some of it will have to be some soil conditions. And part of the TAD discussing was, regional retention and things like that. You got water runoff. So the more buildable space that we end up with, the more units. The less buildable space we get. So that's the reason the land swap was all brought in there. Simply because there's a creek, we can build on both sides, but it compresses the amount of units. This would give us a lot broader area because it would, making the land swap, utilize a piece of property, plus it would give actually more land to the city that's west of the creek. And so then from that standpoint, that's some benefits that I would look at.
Questions, comments?
Tom, I am assuming that the city council has discussed this in work sessions and so forth. No?
Council doesn't have work sessions anymore.
Oh, you don't?
No, just too many.
Well, maybe you need to put that on your to-do list, Matthew.
It's been
That's a
discussed.
sore point with a lot of people.
So the first they would hear is, what do we decide tonight then?
Yeah, I mean, what I would like for y'all to do is tell me if you're interested, and if you are, which flavor of this. And then we would go produce a map that shows the existing footprint and the proposed footprint, and then y'all can approve it at the next meeting.
I don't know about the rest of the members of the authority, but I don't see any point in piecemealing this. Either we do it and let people make their plans accordingly if there's any to be made, and go from that standpoint with it.
Is that a motion from you, Bill?
It is.
All right. Got a motion?
Second,
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Abstain.
You abstain. Okay.
Okay.
because you'll have to vote on it tomorrow.
Possibly.
So that's all we need from y'all, Tom?
I think so.
That all we need, Stacy?
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
You'll be seeing them again.
Okay, we'll move on down to new business. Facade grant application, Jerry Cole. I don't believe he's here.
So Jerry actually has a copy of it. You guys can pass it around. It's 10 pages. They had put in for a facade grant. They are not in a historic building, so they don't have to go through that process.
It's the same one.
Jerry's building
It's
is.
the same one we got in the
that's it.
packet.
Yeah. Jerry's building is actually Amy Brown State Farm, so they're wanting to replace the door and the outside color. I think there's proposals in there, one for $2,250 and then $3,900 for paint and labor. Obviously facade is a matching grant, and I think they're asking for up to $5,000 is the percentage. And I think what they're asking together is $2,250 plus $3,900, which is $6,000 and some change. I did ask Jerry to come tonight.
So they're asking for half of the total of those two invoices. I didn't see an invoice for lighting, so do they have a
I
number?
think that's in the $2,250, I think,
Do you have something?
or no.
No. It says it's got the insulated door, extra materials to ready the opening, and extra labor to ready the opening.
And the other one's for paint and
The other
labor.
one's paint and labor, so
Okay.
there's no can lights.
Okay,
He did mention lighting.
he
to me.
did, but I
Yeah,
don't see anything
yeah.
on that.
But, so they're asking for half of the total, which would be less than the 5,000 limit. up in this upper top here, it says, projects that promise greater economic impact will be given greater priority. So do we have an economic impact for this facade improvement?
We don't.
Other than downtown needs to be spruced up as much as possible.
For sure.
Yes.
And he's applied for this before, I believe, via an exterior improvement grant, and he was through the Main Street and was not granted at that time, and I'm not sure, that was before my time, but
But didn't he get a Main Street grant this time?
correct.
Okay.
How much is the Main Street grant?
Well,
How
there's
mu-
two, there's a Boost, which is an interior, which is 1,000, and then there's the EIG, which is a $2,500 grant, which is what we approved for him this year, the EIG grant, exterior improvement grant.
So he got 2,500 there.
Correct.
Now, does that go against the total cost or
That
what?
wouldn't be included in that, this is a whole different,
Yeah, our facade grant is a matching, so, but they can use the Main Street Advisory Board grant to be the match.
Yeah. exactly. So he's not gonna be penalized for getting the exterior improvement grant, because this is done through the DDA, and the other one is done through Main Street.
So the way this thing works now is that there'll be less and less out of pocket then for the owner of the building.
Correct.
Hey, it's not a bad deal, is it?
Any questions, comments?
In the dark ages, when we started this back, back when we gave Noah his
The ARC.
grant, yeah, we required a rendering of the finished product. Not necessarily a professionally done rendering, but one that would really show a before and after what's going to be done. Can we get one of those from these?
At one time, he did have a before and after in there, is that not in that packet?
Got a new door design, yeah. It looks kind of blank, I don't know if that's on purpose.
That's just,
Should be the after, which this is not colored, but
that's just
it just says.
a garage door type deal.
At the bottom of his present door is kind of about gone in places.
Yeah.
Well, that building has a long history here in Villa Roca. It was a hardware store for years and years, and now it's Amy Brown's business.
Correct.
Yeah.
And does this come out of the DDA account?
Correct.
Okay, that's Tracy's account, right?
Well, since these gentlemen mentioned a few minutes ago that if this big bond deal goes through, we're going to have enough money to buy a building downtown, aren't we?
I'm all for that.
Could we do that, Mr. Barber? Okay.
That sounds like a Stacy question.
Move to approve the facade grant for Jerry Cole as requested.
All right, got a
Second.
motion to approve.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor? All right, moving on down. Well, I guess one more thing on new business. We've got a letter from Mr. Ryan, says regrettably it's my resignation from the DDA and the CBB board. So
Yes. So he sent me that Friday. I was out of the office, and then I think he sent it to Tracy as
Tracy.
well. So we need to talk about replacing Ryan, and then Matt, he may have the shortest term on the DDA ever. I don't know. So talk about that as well, because you'll be sworn in tomorrow night for city council, correct?
Yes, but I'm not sure which boards I'm going to
Okay.
be resigning from at this time, so.
So,
you possibly could still be on the DDA board if the city council approves him. Is that right, the way I understand it?
That's right. I talked to, the statute says that you can have one member of the governing authority on
Mhm.
the board, and I was talking to David Mecklin, and we were thinking the city council might have to vote to appoint you in that capacity,
Okay.
to clarify that. So that, we think that would be the process.
We're glad to keep you too.
And I think they kept a spot on public safety for you, too.
Yes, I think so.
So for the next meeting, I know you guys came up with a committee last time. I know that we have some applicants left over from that pool. You just need to decide if we need to post it again. Are you gonna pull from that list of applicants?
Probably need to post it again, don't we, Bill?
I would think post it again because we might have to fill 2.
Okay. And then from
And-
that point, we'll make, from that pool, you guys need to set up an interview time if it's gonna be
Right.
the same folks, and then we'll announce that at the next DDA meeting, who you chose.
Okay.
Okay.
I have got a question, Stacy, too, about the member of the authority from the city council. Is that a voting member of the authority or,
Yes, they would vote.
okay.
They're a regular member.
Well, we had tried to have
Liaison.
a council member meet with us long time ago, but that only lasted a couple of months.
Liaison.
And it's important to be able to feed back information to the city council. So I would certainly encourage the council, Mr. Barber, to appoint somebody here, or someone on the council, Matthew or whoever the council decides, to actually be a voting member of this group.
So one of the things that we talked about is doing a joint meeting a couple of times with the council and the to facilitate that communication. What are y'all working on? What's the council commission you're working on? Whatever.
Well, would that be necessary, though, with a member
Maybe not.
on the
We
authority?
never talked about having a council member on this. But we have one on the development authority. Mr. Carter serves there.
I think it'd be good to have a council member that could take all of the stuff back on a regular basis, not just a semi-annual get-together.
Yeah, what happens in the case of P and Z is Mr. Hanback comes to almost all the council meetings and reminds the council of what their decisions were and how important following their advice is, so.
Yeah, John's a handy guy.
All right, we'll move on down to number 2, discussion of process and policies for grants approval. Is that yours, Michael?
Oh, sorry.
At my first meeting, we issued a grant to the Art Coalition. And I don't really have a problem with what we did. I voted for it. Hallie made a good presentation. But we didn't have a documented request. Not even like this facade grant that we've got a documented request here. And I felt that we should memorialize what they're asking for and what they're going to use it for. What I handed out was what Main Street uses for the community development grant, and I think that could be used as a template. I don't think we need to follow it exactly. There's some things in here that may not make sense, like the city has got some issues with the community development grant that they want to get them all in front of them so they can prioritize and divide the money up properly. I don't know that we have that issue. So this March 29th deadline that the city has for the community development grant wouldn't apply. The community development grant also says it has to be used at the mill. That wouldn't apply to us either, but we'd want it to be whatever the action is, to be inside the borders of the DDA, even if they're expanded borders. So I think this could be a template that we modify a little bit, but it would allow us to memorialize the request and what they're asking for, so that even if it's a good thing like Hallie's presentation, that the project was good, I just felt funny that we didn't have a piece of paper in front of us to say, yeah, I understand what's going on.
Do you think we need to modify the one we've got here then?
Oh, I think we ought to, this is more like it's discussion, so I figured we'd just take some time and look at this,
Okay.
and then amongst ourselves saying, okay, what do we throw out, and what do we add back in, kind
Ready
of
to bring it back
thing.
to the next meeting
Yeah.
then? All right. Okay, we'll move on down to number 7, public comment. All right, number 8, items for future agenda. Executive session.
Since Carl's not here, we don't have anything to input there.
Okay. All right, do I have a motion to adjourn the downtown development meeting at 6:58?
Just so moved.
All right,
Second.
Michael, okay. All right, we got a motion and a second, all in favor? All right, we'll go to the next meeting, which is the CDB meeting. Meeting called to order at 6:59. Has everybody taken a chance to look over our minutes? And I believe we had a correction there, is that right?
We do have one correction. Hold on, let me find it. The funding request by Hallie Henriksen, the Villarica Arts Coalition under new business.
Kim.
Oh, sorry. I forget that's there. It was said that, that I objected to the 10,000, and actually I was recusing myself from voting because I am on the board of the Villarica Arts Coalition. So if we can correct that,
Just that you recused yourself from that vote?
I did.
Okay. All
I
right,
was
we'll-
not voting against it.
We'll get Tracy to put that in the minutes right then.
And I believe that Carl Peabody, he had concerns about, you know, the money, tourism being like an overnight stay, and he made that point, so that probably needs to be added too. Yeah.
You know, when Mr. Barber mentioned the tourism and the relationship we've got to the motels and whatnot here, I certainly understand that. That's the source of the funds. But our opportunities to promote the use of the motels are really very limited, and we will certainly do what we can to do so. But the definition that you talked about, the difference in a tourist and a visitor, sometimes that gets kind of gray. And so a lot of our activities are for visitors because they're not going to drive in here and spend the night, you know, from 50 miles away. So, yeah, we would like to work with the motels, and I think we'd be willing to do that any way we can, but they're going to have to come forward with some ideas also, I think.
Okay, so we need a motion on the minutes with a correction by,
I've got one more, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman. On the Burnett property here, it says, he added that Dr. Burson would like to see a war memorial. That should be Dr. Burnett.
Dr. Burnett instead of Dr. Burson,
Yeah.
okay. We'll make those corrections, let Tracy take care of those with those corrections. Do I have a motion to accept these minutes?
Move to approve as amended.
Okay. Have a
Second.
second?
Second.
Okay, moving on down, I guess we'll skip number 3 for the financial report since Mr. Carl's not here tonight. Number 4 is old business. Follow up on Hallie.
Hello again.
Howdy.
Hi.
Excuse me. Well, I don't want to take a lot of your time, but we felt, we talked with the board, obviously, after the meeting last month, and we have just been really struck with the need to meet the goals of the CVB, to be able to encourage events or to help support events and participate in events to encourage overnight visitors. That seemed to be emphasized, and I hear what was just talked about just now about that. As I stated last time, and I think everybody agrees, that anything we can do to bring visitors into the city may eventually result in more people coming to the city to make the city better, to make it more attractive, to where eventually more events will be put on that would be overnight, require overnight stays. So since then, we have Art Fest coming up, and we are diligently working on that. But we do expect to spend a good bit of time talking about ways in which this money could be properly used. We feel very, very responsible about it. We don't take it lightly at all. But we will be talking more in depth about it. But since then, Kimberly Stovall did make the opportunity to go down and talk with Sharon DuPont at Main Street. And Sharon offered some insight and some good ideas about maybe what the Arts Coalition could do, maybe in partnering or helping with some of the other organizations that are bringing in visitors, such as the Thomas Dorsey group, the Thomas Dorsey Festival. That's, of course, a 3-day event. So, anything we could do and we have not approached them at all. This is just in the formative thinking stages. Also, things like the Taste of Villarica. I do want to mention that the Cowboy Festival, although you might not think of that as arts, they do have poetry and they have writers that come, happens to fall on the exact same weekend that Art Fest does. And I have talked with them over there, just as nice as they could be, and they see the dilemma as well. Last year it was a 2-day event. This year it's going back to a 1-day event, which is right on the same day. So we draw from, we pull away from each other. We don't help each other. I don't know what can be done about that. We're kind of hammered in because of the mill being already committed for certain dates for a long-term basis. So, and I don't really know, I haven't talked in depth with those folks up at the museum about that. But, I just want to continue to state, that originally the Arts Fest did fall into the city, and some time ago, of course, it was developed as a separate non-city funded event, although we've been very fortunate to have funding from the city and from the DDA or the CVB. But the former Director of Economic Development is the one who really encouraged us to form a nonprofit, Chris Pike. And he lit a fire under us to get our organization going. And we had 2 galas, we did fundraising. So, it's obvious that there's a lot of value in promoting the arts in any city. And I think that this city grasps that and is grabbing a hold of that. But regarding the way that we envision the money being spent as we move along further, I do want to say that we have wonderful resources on our board for developing marketing materials and doing design work and all of that. We're very fortunate to have the kinds of people that we do. We don't pay any salaries. We don't compensate any of our board members for any of the services that they provide. So every bit of time that our board gives is just gratis. It's just something that we do because we love it. We don't fund, and there's no individual board member that has money that we can put in to the Arts Coalition. We depend on grants. They're few and far between, and that's why we really feel like it's important that we pursue grant writers, because there is money for the arts, and we do feel that we need to jump on that. But we're going to need help with that. We have somewhat limited resources. So I just felt like that you all should hear from us about where we are with things, and that we do want to do things that promote tourism. We want to do what we can, and that, as far as salaries and things like that, also, our bylaws don't even permit us to pay salaries or compensation in any way to our board members. So I just felt it was important because this is a lot of money. It's amazing how quickly you can spend it if you don't think properly. So we are working diligently on that right now. We're really preoccupied with Art Fest, but we're going to begin to hammer some things out and talk with other groups. We'd like to talk some more with Main Street about what we can do to work together to achieve the goals of the city and see if we can't find some common ground. So, is there any questions anybody has?
Hallie, I might want to make a suggestion as you're using the funds that we have given to you. Maybe you'd if you'll come to us maybe on a semi-annual basis, just to show us on a piece of paper
Absolutely.
what you've done, what you've gotten from it, and so forth, because eventually you're going to use it up, and you might want some more.
That's true. Yes, and we do that with all of the things that we account for each different event and where the monies come from.
Yeah,
And I think that the suggestion about having a grant proposal or something like that is an excellent one because, we kind of felt like we needed some boundaries. We needed some parameters to work within. So I think that's a great idea. But yes, we would be more than happy to do that.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on down to number 5, new business. Request from Mr. Courtney, looks like.
So you guys will see here, staple on the back is kind of description Courtney sent me. This would be for the July 3rd fireworks.
I don't think I got any of that.
It's on-
I
it's
don't
on
have
the
any of
back.
that.
Oh, mine is, the very back.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
So this is something, I think, in the past that the CVB has typically given them $1,500 for the July 3rd extravaganza, which probably brings in, what, Courtney, 20,000? Pretty much, yeah. So this is just a request from them for $1,500 for that purpose.
I would assume the funds are there for that.
Okay.
Vicky couldn't have got $1,500 more out of the city? I mean, they were so exuberant about the fireworks and everything, that she should have tapped them for $1,500 more at that time.
Well, one thing I do want to say that the event is budgeted by the city. And so, your donation will be listed as a sponsorship. So we've been seeking sponsors, not necessarily offset the cost, but to be able to aid in sponsorship, so if that makes any sense. So we definitely appreciate your donation if you choose to, and have a better understanding how the term tourism is being defined as far as putting heads in beds opposed to visitors. So I've heard that before. So I will keep that in mind in future donations, requesting my donations. So
Well, it sure brings in a lot of people out
It
there,
does.
doesn't it?
Yeah.
it really does. We
Yeah.
average out with at least 10,000 on the field. Typically 15,000 people view the event. So it's one of the city's largest special events. And this is our 14th annual fireworks display. We have a couple bands that are extremely special. The Springs have been back, have attended before. And we have Electric Avenue, which is a great 80s band. So if you guys are not doing anything, you're welcome to come out.
I can see the fireworks from my house,
I can
Courtney,
too.
and it's a long way off.
Okay? So you're one
I
of
can hear 'em
those
too
viewing
at my house.
participants. We definitely appreciate that.
Oh, do you have a motion to this?
Motion to approve?
All right, motion to approve.
I'll second.
A motion and a second. All in favor?
Thank you all.
Thank you, Courtney.
All right, moving on right on down. Public comment. Items for future agenda. Executive session. Do I have a motion to adjourn at 7:12?
So me.
Got a motion? Second? All in favor?